The bell above the door of Harrington and Sons Fine Jewelry chimed like a gunshot at 11:47 a.m. on a gray Saturday in downtown Chicago. Margaret Harrington stepped across the threshold in a simple navy coat, white hair pulled into a low bun, sensible flats scuffed from the L train. No one looked up. No one ever did when she came in like this. She liked it that way. She paused by the emerald display, pretending to study a pair of drop earrings while her eyes drifted to the salesman behind the counter, Derek Walsh, 29, slick hair, tighter suit than the budget allowed, and a smirk that had closed more deals than his charm ever could. He was leaning over the glass toward a young couple, voice dripping with rehearsed patience. Margaret moved closer, quiet as falling snow, and stopped in front of the wedding bands. Derek didn't see her at first. When he did, his eyes flicked down to her coat, department store, last season, then to her bare fingers, no rings, no flash, then to the small worn purse clutched in both hands. Calculation complete. He turned his back on the young couple mid-sentence and sauntered over. "Can I help you find the exit, ma'am?" His smile was all teeth. "We're a little out of the Timex price range here." The young woman with her fiancé gasped softly. Margaret just tilted her head. "I'm actually looking for something in white gold," she said, voice soft, steady, the faintest trace of South Side Chicago still tucked into the vowels. "Maybe a half-carat solitaire. Simple band. Nothing flashy." Derek snorted. Not even a polite chuckle, an actual snort. "Ma'am, with respect, these pieces start at $8,000. I'm guessing that's a couple months of your Social Security check." He leaned in, lowering his voice like he was doing her a favor. "There's a mall kiosk in Evergreen Park that does nice silver plate. I can draw you a map." Heat flashed across the young fiancé's cheeks. Her fiancé opened his mouth, then closed it, unsure whose side etiquette demanded. Margaret didn't flinch. She reached into her purse, slow, deliberate, and pulled out a small velvet pouch. From it she produced a ring, a stunning Asher-cut diamond flanked by sapphires, easily 5 carats, glinting like it had its own heartbeat. Derek blinked. "That's a nice knockoff." "It's not," Margaret said quietly. "It was my mother's. She bought it here in 1958. From Mr. Harrington himself. Paid in full, cash, the day after my father shipped out to Korea. He never came home. She wore it every day until she died last year." She slipped it onto her finger, it fit perfectly. "I was thinking of trading it in. Starting over. But I wanted to come back to the store that sold it to her. Thought maybe someone here would remember what this place used to stand for." Derek's smirk faltered. His eyes darted to the security camera, then to his manager's empty office. Weekends were slow, the district manager was golfing. Margaret continued, softer now. "I raised 3 kids on a secretary's salary after my husband passed. Worked 2 jobs so they could go to college. My youngest, Tommy, he was killed in Afghanistan in 2011. This ring is the last thing of value I own in the world. I thought, maybe I could get enough to pay for a proper headstone. His still says, beloved son, on temporary metal. 9 years now." The store had gone still. Even the classical music playing overhead seemed to hush. Derek swallowed. "Look, lady." Margaret lifted a hand. "It's Mrs. Harrington, actually." He froze. She reached into her purse again and pulled out a small leather wallet. Flipped it open. Inside was an old black and white photo, a young woman beaming beside a tall man in a 1950s suit, both of them standing beneath the same Harrington and Sons sign that still hung outside, only brighter than proud. On the back, in faded ink, Margaret and Daniel Harrington, opening day 1955. Derek's face drained of color. Margaret, 81 years old, 5'2" in her flats, widow of the founder, majority shareholder, and silent owner of the entire chain for the last 30 years, looked up at him with eyes that had seen 2 wars, 4 recessions, and every kind of grief a heart can carry. "I came in today," she said, "because I heard one of my salesmen has been hitting his numbers by making customers feel small. I wanted to see it for myself." She glanced around the showroom. Every employee who had been pretending not to listen now stood openly staring. "I guess I did." Derek opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Margaret turned to the young couple, who hadn't moved an inch. She smiled, warm, genuine, the kind of smile that made you believe the world still had good corners. "You too," she said. "Come here." They obeyed like children. She took the woman's hand, studied the finger where a ring would one day sit. "What's your budget, sweetheart?" The fiancé stammered. We were hoping for something under 4,000, but..." Margaret waved a hand. "Pick anything you love. Today it's on the house." She looked at the fiancé. "Love isn't about how much you spend. It's about who you choose to spend your life making feel safe. Remember that." The young woman's eyes filled with tears. "Ma'am, Mrs. Harrington, we can't possibly." "You can, and you will." Margaret's voice left no room for argument. "Consider it my apology for the welcome you received." She turned back to Derek, who looked suddenly very small inside his expensive suit. "Derek," she said, reading his name tag, "you're fired. Security will escort you out. Your final check will be mailed. And I'll be personally calling every store manager in the district to make sure no one else hires you until you learn that the only thing more expensive than our jewelry is a person's dignity." 2 security officers appeared as if they'd been waiting in the wings. Derek didn't fight. He just walked, head down, past the displays he'd once lorded over. Margaret watched him go. Then she took a deep breath, rolled her shoulders like someone setting down a heavy bag, and faced her staff. "I started this company," she said, voice carrying without effort, "because my husband believed beautiful things should be for everyone who walked through the door, not just the ones wearing Rolexes. We lost that somewhere. Today reminded me." She looked at the young couple again. The fiancé was crying openly now, clutching a small velvet box that held a ring she'd never dared dream of. Margaret touched the girl's cheek. "Be kind to each other. That's the real forever." Then she walked to the back office, her office, though no one had seen her use it in years, closed the door, and finally let herself cry. Not for Derek. Not even for the company. For Tommy, whose temporary marker still waited. For her mother, who never took that ring off, even when her fingers swelled with age. For every person who'd ever been made to feel less than because of the balance in their bank account. She cried until her chest hurt, then wiped her face, straightened her coat, and opened the door again. The staff was waiting. Nervous. Guilty. Hopeful. Margaret smiled, small but real. "All right," she said. "New rule, starting today, every Saturday, we open an hour early, no appointment needed, for anyone who wants to come in and just look. No sales pressure. No judgment. Coffee's free. We're going to remember why we're here." She paused, looked out at the street where holiday shoppers hurried past, and added softly. "And somebody call the stone mason on Diversey. Tell him the Harrington family finally has the money for a proper headstone. Tell him to use the best Vermont marble. My boy waited long enough." The bell chimed again as the young couple left, arms around each other, the new ring catching the winter light like a promise. Margaret Harrington stood in the doorway of the store she'd built with love and loss, watching them go, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel quite so alone. Because sometimes the richest people in the room aren't the ones who can afford the diamonds. They're the ones who still believe every single person deserves to be treated like they can.